Hey everyone, I'm David Sirota, founder and editor of The Lever, an independent investigative news outlet. You can go subscribe to our email list at levernews.com and find our YouTube channel at youtube.com/levernews, where we post all sorts of videos about our investigative reporting. You've probably seen The Lever's work featured on Breaking Points, and today we're bringing you a big story that The Lever just reported. It's a crazy story about the chemicals in a lot of your household products. Joining me is the Lever journalist who broke today's big story, Rebecca Burns. Hey, Rebecca.
Hey, David, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm thinking about forever chemicals because of the headline in the Lever's story today, your story. Here's the headline: Forever Chemicals makers hid dangers for decades. So the makers of forever chemicals hid the dangers of these toxins for decades. That's the story. So let's start with what a forever chemical is. What is a forever chemical, and why should literally everybody who's watching this video care about them?
Right. So, this is a class of chemicals that's found in everything from nonstick pans to waterproof clothing. They take hundreds of years to break down, and they're so ubiquitous in sort of thousands of household products that at this point, the Centers for Disease Control has estimated that they're in the blood at some level in 97% of Americans.
97% of Americans. That is really there's very few things that have a 90%, 97% penetration to the population. Like maybe like Michael Jordan at his peak, 97% of people knew who Michael Jordan is. Now 97% of Americans have forever chemicals in their bodies. So then the question is, why is that a problem? How dangerous are these chemicals?
Right. So they've been linked repeatedly in studies to several types of cancer, possibly to birth defects, to decreased fertility, and all other kinds of health problems that, particularly when people are exposed at higher levels, have had really devastating consequences for example, communities living near where the sites where these types of chemicals are produced. But also for all of us, we're still sort of figuring out what the long term health effects will be.
Right. So this is stuff like, nonstick pans. It's in all sorts of things you don't really think about as chemical products. So pervasive. Now, some states have brought litigation against the companies that manufactured these chemicals, companies like DuPont, 3M, and the lawsuits argue that these manufacturers knew or should have known about the potential harms caused by their product. Just tell us a little bit about the litigation before we get into the new documents at the center of this story.
Right. So there's been some major class action lawsuits over the past decade or so, but right now there's a real wave of litigation from municipalities and states. So there's one that appears sort of poised to settle for $10 million with, I think, about 4,000 municipalities that are finding that their public water systems are contaminated with these chemicals and don't necessarily have the resources to clean up those water systems. States are also suing to help with the costs of cleanup, for example. Where a particular firefighting foam was used that has these chemicals in it. So the bottom line here is that because the contamination is so pervasive, the cleanup costs are going to be huge, and the question is really how much are the manufacturers going to be on the hook for those costs?
So one case that's the 3M case, it could be a $10 billion settlement, which my sense is that still would be a drop in the bucket when it comes to how pervasive these chemicals are. So again, at the center of this is this allegation that these companies knew or should have known about the potential harms. Okay, so let's get to the center of the story that we reported at the Lever this week. There are newly available documents that show that not only did manufacturers know about these risks, in some cases they took steps to cover that up. So what do the documents give us? Some examples of what these documents show and how they show that?
Right. So there's a cache of documents that were obtained through earlier litigation. Public health researchers at the University of California, San Francisco, have just come out with a new study that rely on those documents and make all of them for the first time publicly available in one place. You can actually go through and see what executives at DuPont were saying about their chemicals, say in 1970. So just to use that example, 1970, that's about 40 years before some of the first major studies about the risks of these chemicals really started making national headlines. In 1970, one of the memos in this study that I was able to take a look at, sort of references the fact that there have already been conclusions in a DuPont funded lab that these chemicals are, quote, highly toxic when inhaled and moderately toxic when ingested. So we actually don't really know the exact starting point of when when chemical manufacturers started to sort of be concerned and study these internally, but we know that by 1970 they had already made this type of conclusion and did not share it with federal environmental regulators as is required by law.
Okay, so that's a great example, and a disturbing example. You also report on, I mean, that was in the 70s. You also
Mm-hmm.
report all the way up into the mid 2000s. I mean, there's this incredible email exchange that was uncovered from the mid 2000s, right? So now, I mean, the 1970s is like a really long time ago. Like the mid 2000s is not that long ago, and it was about DuPont and the EPA. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So in 2006, you have a panel of outside scientific experts, who had looked more closely at, some of the lawsuits from communities saying that they were being impacted from available evidence at the time, and they recommended that the EPA label this class of chemicals a likely human carcinogen and start adopting stricter regulations. So immediately, the emails, available again through the University of California at San Francisco, show the companies kind of going into spin mode and expressing basically that they're feel they can count on the Environmental Protection Agency, that's responsible for protecting the public, to help them sort of mitigate the fallout from negative news coverage. So I'll just read you sort of the email from DuPont's vice president, writing to her team in 2006, says the only voice that can cut through the negative stories of the voice of the APA. She then goes out to outline some talking points that they want the agency to adopt, including that, because this determination was a recommendation rather than a finding, they want the EPA to say, don't worry, you can keep using your nonstick pans. The next month, that is what the EPA appears to have actually done, telling people that they thought Teflon products were still safe to use. So, here we are now, a decade and a half later. 97% of people are estimated to have this class of chemicals to some degree in their bloodstream. Yeah, and the next steps for how we deal with the problem are really somewhat uncertain.
So let's talk about next steps. I mean, those documents, which everyone can go see, we've got the links up at levernews.com. Those documents are just incredible, and that study is incredible. The next steps here, states seem to be trying to pass laws to deal with these forever chemicals. And the Biden EPA has proposed some new rules about this. Tell us about that. And on the EPA issues, tell us what experts are saying about whether they go far enough or not far enough.
Yeah, so the EPA has taken a big step this spring in proposing what would be sort of the first enforceable limits in drinking water on how much of these chemicals could be contained in public water systems. I believe it's 4 parts per trillion. That they would actually set requirements not to go over that level. Some scientific experts do say that that's still above what may be safe. An alternate standard that's been recommended by some environmental and consumer advocacy groups is 1 point per trillion. Again, the question here is just really because this contamination is so widespread, how are we going to enforce it? So, we saw municipalities already suing manufacturers over their water contamination. I think the question is also like, are they going to have the resources to do this cleanup? Without serious help from the federal government and without some pretty serious accountability to the makers of the chemicals.
Rebecca Burns, reporter at The Lever, thank you so much for your reporting. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, David.
And I just want to remind everyone, we're going to continue to report on this story and other stories like it at The Lever. You can find this story at levernews.com and subscribe to our email newsletter there. Also, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/levernews. Again, that's youtube.com/levernews. Thanks for watching.